The Amazing Spider-Man. That's right. For some reason, we're doing a Spider-Man film for Movie Tales. I wonder why. Is there a reason we could be talking about a Spider-Man film? Especially this one in particular? I don't know, maybe. So, let's get this out of the way because I need to say this before we kind of get into this. I like comic books and I like superhero comic books. And arguably, Spider-Man's the biggest one of all time. I have never been able to get into this character the way other people have. I have liked Spider-Man, I have enjoyed Spider-Man, but he's never been my favorite. I've never actively read a Spider-Man comic. I've never gone out of my way to, verse myself in the character. I know a lot, but I don't care. I'm a Raimi fan. I like the Raimi films. And then I've saw them all before I saw this one, of course. This might be the first Spider-Man film I saw in theaters. And let's go back to 2012 for a minute. We are in a post-Dark Knight era. That movie blew up. It was big. It was cool. We were in a post-MCU launching era. We were just coming to Avengers. Avengers might have been out by the time this came out. I don't remember what month of the year it came out. It was the same year as Avengers, though. So superhero movies were bigger than ever. So Sony, of course, being the brilliant powerhouse they are, they're like, why don't we reboot Spider-Man but make it dark brooding like The Dark Knight, because that's what people obviously want. So we got this, a weird product, and it's an interesting film. I would argue to say it's bad. I don't think it's bad by any stretch of the imagination, not like its sequel would be, but this film is just very interesting. I think it's very much like a product of like a studio building something, which kind of could be something that people don't like. I mean, there's good or bad versions of that. This one's okay. First off, the story itself is kind of dark. It does play a lot of like the similar beats of the Spider-Man franchise. Uncle Ben has to die again. Peter Parker is unlikable. One of the things I do actually like about this film is like, it's Peter Parker is kind of like the dorky outsider, but he's not like hated for no reason. Like people, they like him. Flash just kind of like, picks on him a little bit, maybe just because, Flash is just weird that way. I buy the way like the world treats him more than in the other movies because those are unjustified. This one's just like, yeah, they kind of razz on the kid like a couple of friends would their buddy. Like it makes sense to me. But the fact that none of them could tell that he's Spider-Man when he literally like dunks a basketball and shatters the entire rim, I'm like, really? You couldn't pinpoint that this kid might be the guy swinging through the city? It's weird. It also does have like this weird, making of the superhero where there's like the montage of him learning stuff. It feels inauthentic here in some ways, but I get it. You have to do these in these scenes. It happens in these movies, so I can't fault it for doing that. It's just so obvious and whatever. So I like the way it kind of sets up. Of course, Uncle Ben dies. We have to have the spider bite again. It's a little more, different in here, which is like a mutation. And well, not mutation, just genetic coding for a spider. It's fine. It's moderned up a lot. And that's something that could sometimes be the detriment of these films. It is modern up to a point where I'm like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. But whatever, it's okay. Let's talk about Andrew Garfield for a second, because he delivers a pretty good Peter Parker, and he delivers a really good Spider-Man. I don't know who my favorite Spider-Man is. That's like picking a favorite Batman. To me, it's always going to be Adam West, but he does a good job as Spider-Man. Mainly, I think he just gets like the neurotic nature of Peter, where he's just kind of like all over the place at once, overextending himself to the point where nothing's really going his way. That to me is something he captured perfectly. Like the way he's just like lying to his aunt, he's lying to Gwen. He feels so uncomfortable in every situation. He does a great job of portraying that. Does he look like a high school student? Oh, no, none of them do. They all look like they're 30. So I think that's just something that's become common. And it's like, why do we always have to set him in high school? Like, we could do, like, the flashback to Uncle Ben dying, but do we have to do every Spider-Man movie in a high school? The character hasn't been in high school for years, is all I'm saying. Decades, even. It's weird to me. But he does a great job. I really like his Spider-Man, actually, because I think he's just, like, sarcastic enough to make it work. The suit is very interesting to me. I'm not going to say it's my favorite suit for the Spider-Man, but I think it's very much like we're trying something here. The darkened eyes are a really inspired choice. I do like them because it's just very interesting. The suit itself just looks very sleek and rubbery. It just could have a little more style to it, but it doesn't. So I think it's kind of cool. There's some really interesting moments I do like with him where he's like make like the hammock of the webs in the sewers waiting for the lizard to attack, and he's just playing on his phone. I like that. That's Peter Parker to me. That makes a lot of sense to me. I enjoyed that too. I think that's really cool. I like the Lizard. I don't know who my favorite Spider-Man villain is. I've always said it might be Kraven just because I think it's the perfect contrast to, the nerdy kid is like the buff jock guy trying to capture the spider. But the Lizard's awesome. It's just a big lizard that comes in and terrorizes people. And it falls into the trap of the villains of the era where it's just like he's evil for no really explicit reason. So Kirk Connors, played by Rhys Ifans, is just angry and he tries to use this new cure he's making to fix his arm, turns him into a big lizard. And then he's like, I'm going to use this because now I'm evil to turn all of New York into lizards. Which I love that plot. It's a great plot because it's just so comic booky and dumb. A city of lizards would be so cool to see. Could you imagine if they actually showed that part of the movie where he actually kind of went through with it and people started to turn into lizards? That would be sick. That would be really cool and I would adore that. I like that a lot. The lizard design itself is really goofy. It's not lizardy enough. It's just more like a flat matted face that looks like a turtle as opposed to a lizard. It should be a little more goofy and put some clothes on him. It would be so easy just to put some clothes on him. Not just an homage where he's ripping off a lab coat. Put some purple pants on that guy. Put some purple pants on the lizard. That's all I want to see in this. That'd be really cool. And the fight scenes between them are really good. They actually look pretty cool. Of course, there's some CGI nonsense going on, but I generally like it. It's we're actually seeing a Spider-Man flipping about, doing some crazy stuff while fighting a giant lizard. It looks really cool, and it's very fun to see that stuff. It's just exactly what a Spider-Man fan would want from that. And as somebody who isn't a big Spider-Man fan like myself, it worked for me, especially looking back on it now. I'm yeah, this isn't terrible. I think it gets more hate just because, it's not as classic looking as the Raimi stuff, and Holland just is, I guess, that character to some people. But I really enjoyed what we saw here. The action looked really cool. It is tinted really dark, which, again, is very much a product of the era it was built in, where everything tried to be that dark, gripping aesthetic. It wasn't, I think, until Guardians of the Galaxy that kind of changed, especially in these type of stories. But I like it a lot. It looked pretty interesting. And else, Gwen Stacy, I get why you do her as opposed to Mary Jane. Emma Stone did fine. I think she could have played a Mary Jane type too, but I understand why you do that. I will stand by that the best thing that ever happened to Gwen Stacy was her dying. But the chemistry between these two here, it's good. It's not bad. They seem friendly, they seem happy, they seem like they're just two co-stars enjoying each other's company on set. You buy their relationship, the weird awkward dinner that they are having where Peter's I literally just got slashed in the chest, now we're having dinner and I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing here. I buy it a lot. I think, using Captain Stacy to this aesthetic actually really works for the story too. Because he's just that perfect character that you can introduce to have killed off in a one-off movie, because that's all he is. So I think that works really well. And it was just very impressive to see that actually work out the way it should have. It just added, I think, a different layer than just doing the Mary Jane thing again, which I understand the idea to do that because Mary Jane's going to be the biggest character ever for these things. But Gwen was just a cool foil. And I like Garfield and Stone's chemistry. It just felt believable and fun. Just something special to this genre and to these films, which I think was very impressive. So this film just did a lot of weird stuff. There's just certain moments that. I think the most unnecessary scene was when Peter's on the subway and his hands are just sticking everything and he rips that girl's shirt off. I get what you're trying to do, just show hey, we're an adult Spider-Man kind of, but you're not really. You're just doing something crazy. It was just weird. It's just a weird choice, and there's so many just other weird moments. Again, you know instantly that this kid is Spider-Man, so the fact that nobody pinpoints that or figures it out is just weird. He's a mess, and he's not that. He's just it's obviously the neurotic kid that can't get his life together. That's the one terrorizing our city in these different ways. You'd pinpoint exactly it's this kid because he's not doing a good job of hiding it in any type of the form. So, yeah, you'd figure it out pretty much immediately with that stuff. And this film, it's really interesting, especially when we have so many other templates for a Spider-Man film to go off of. This one just feels the most different, where it's if we go dark, if we go a more tragic route, just show these heartfelt moments with Sally Field and Martin Sheen, then we kill off Martin Sheen, who's a great Uncle Ben, by the way. we just kill them off, and we do like this weird, just showing Peter through his angst and his depression, and we still just have these things coming up where he becomes lighthearted again. That's a beautiful story, and it's just not as like campy or quirky as the other ones, and I think sometimes people just like don't like that because Spider-Man should be campy and quirky. But if you can get behind all of that, there's a genuinely fun story in here. There's just a genuinely interesting portrayal of like a certain it just like pinpoints the period that it was made in, where it's like the mid 2010s is just this weird place where everything was trying to emulate the Dark Knight just in terms of like feel. And it does a bad job of doing that because it's nothing like the Dark Knight, but it gives us some pretty cool action with a really interesting villain. And I'm not saying like his bad guy plan is interesting. Just like seeing the Lizard on screen is cool because it's the Lizard, and that's really exciting. And there's some good relationship between the hero and his love interest. There's some fun, jokes that are presented, and Garfield gets a lot of good stuff to do as Peter and Spider-Man. He gets some genuinely fun, interesting things to play with that work really well for him, and the character that I think, is very much a 2012 movie, but it's also very timeless in essence, and it's something I think a lot of people just push aside as being special when in fact it's a creative idea for Spider-Man that went somewhere, did some interesting stuff, and I kind of appreciate it for that. I'm not saying it's the best Spider-Man movie, I just think it swung for the fences. It did some stuff, not a lot of it worked, and it was definitely dark, brooding, and humorless at times, but between that, there's some bright moments and some good jokes, and it's kind of cool just to see that Spider-Man can be interpreted in all these different ways, and I might have definitely softened up to this film over the years, but it's still not bad. So The Amazing Spider-Man, it's not a bad film. It's okay. It's just standard stuff for Spider-Man, which is kind of all it needs to be. So thank you guys for watching this rendition of Movie Tales. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. As always, you can check me out on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, and I will catch you in the next one. Have fun. Stay safe. Good luck.